Coming up today, South Korean businessmen with operations at the Kaesong industrial complex face an uncertain future following Seoul's decision to suspend operations there. None of the 50,000 plus North Korean workers showed up for work this morning. Drumming up support for measures following North Korea's nuclear test and missile launch, South Korea's foreign minister calls on the international community to impose sanctions so strong that they exceed the regime's imagination. Plus, Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen holds her interest rate cards close to her vest, but suggests further hikes could be delayed amid the ongoing economic unrest. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Thursday, the 11th of February. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. We start with the shutdown of the InterKorean Kaesong industrial complex, which is Seoul's strongest response yet to the continued provocations from North Korea. South Korean workers entered the park this morning to bring the process of withdrawing from the complex. For the latest developments, we connect live to our Unification Ministry correspondent Connie Kim at the Inter-Korean Transit Office in Paju. Connie, with all that's going on with the shutdown, has there been any response from North Korea?
Well, Mark, it seems like North Korea has told its workers not to report for duty as no one appeared at the complex today. Now, reportedly, buses arrived at the complex as usual, but the buses inside were empty. Now, North Korea did, however, agree to South Korea's proposed schedule of letting South Koreans in and out of the complex. Now, with the green light, South Korean businessmen started crossing the inter-Korean border into the north starting 9 a.m. and they're expected to come out no later than 5:30 p.m. A total of 132 South Koreans are expected to enter the complex today, and 68 will return at the end of the day. Now, I was able to speak to some of the South Korean businessmen with factories in the complex, and they were definitely not happy about the short notice since they got about the shutdown.
South Koreans with factories at the complex are trying their best, but what we got is a sudden notice to pull out. What did we do wrong? The country would be better off if the companies were allowed to prosper.
We have about a 2-month supply of products stored up. If the government had given us some kind of notice beforehand, we could have balanced out production. I personally don't think it will be easy for the industrial park to reopen after this.
Currently, there are 53 companies whose workers don't reside at the complex, and the ministry says it'll allow them to start withdrawing first. Seoul is hoping to have all South Korean workers out of the complex within a week's time.
Well, Connie, as the factory owners touched upon there are growing concerns within South Korea that the complex will not reopen anytime soon, even with an easing of tensions between the two Koreas down the line. Why is that?
Well, Mark, South Korea's Unification Ministry plans to cut off all electricity and water supply at the complex. Now, this is a firm stance taken by the South Korean government compared to 2013 when North Korea withdrew all of its workers from the complex. Now, the reason for this is because Seoul believes that the operations at the complex have contributed to Pyongyang's weapons of mass destruction development. Now, since 2013, when the complex was first established, South Korean government and firms have invested some $854 million into the complex. Now, in total, that's $516 million of cash funneled into the north. South Korean companies, on its side, is expected to suffer. During its 5-month shutdown back in 2013, they have reported more than $920 million of losses. North Korea has some 54,000 employees scaled to population, it's reported to be equivalent to losses of more than 700,000 American jobs. Now, finding ways to support these South Korean businessmen is an assignment to be solved, as related ministries will be holding a vice ministers meeting to discuss details of financial support. I'm Connie Kim, reporting live from the InterKorean Transit Office in Paju. Mark.
Thank you, Connie, for that extremely comprehensive report on the Kaesong industrial complex shutdown. And in addition to that, South Korea is moving forward with its efforts to drum up support for strong sanctions on North Korea. To that end, Seoul's foreign minister is in New York to meet with UN Security Council members, some of whom have already announced new sanctions on Pyongyang. Our foreign affairs correspondent, Kwon So-ah, has this report.
The international sanctions to be imposed on North Korea need to be at a level that far exceeds the regime's imagination. This is what South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se told reporters in New York on Wednesday after meeting with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and key UN Security Council members.
We expect a strong and effective action towards sanctions. To summarize what I told the council members, this time, we need a terminating resolution.
Minister Yoon, who is on a 2-day trip to the UN headquarters, said the vicious cycle of provocations and resolutions will continue if the sanctions are too weak. He also emphasized the need for individual countries to impose their own independent sanctions. The minister's comments came as the U.S. Senate unanimously passed even tougher sanctions aimed at derailing the regime's drive for ever more advanced nuclear weapons.
The legislation before us today represents the tough response that is necessary to send this message directly to North Korean leaders: disarm or face severe economic sanctions.
Japan has announced new sanctions as well. The measures include a ban on North Korean ships entering Japanese ports, as well as restrictions on people taking cash in excess of $900 to North Korea. A senior official at Seoul's foreign ministry says more countries are sharing the view that the point has been reached where cash flow into the north has to be hindered to cripple the regime's nuclear and missile programs. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
So as we can see, the pressure is piling up on Pyongyang over its recent provocations, and in reaction specifically to North Korea's long-range missile test that happened on Sunday, a rare Joint Chiefs of Staff meeting is being held. They are the highest-ranking military officials from South Korea, the US and Japan, and they are meeting via a video conference. To bring us the latest, we have our Kwon Jang-oh on the line for us. Jang-oh, how are the talks going?
Hi, Mark. Well, the talks began almost 5 hours ago, and it still seems to be ongoing. Today's meeting was being held by military leaders of the three countries to discuss North Korea's recent nuclear test on missile launch. It's the first time the three Joint Chiefs of Staff have convened since July 2014, when, again, North Korea's nuclear tests were the topic of discussion. The meeting is being hosted by the US in Hawaii. It is being attended by the US Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman, General Joseph Dunford, and his Japanese counterpart, Admiral Katsutoshi Kawana. Seoul's chairman, General Lee Seung-jin, is connecting via video from Korea as he could not leave the country due to the state of military readiness currently being adopted. The three leaders will be looking to share information and discuss the measures that need to be taken for the safety of the region. The talks were originally scheduled for an earlier date in response to North Korea's fourth nuclear test, but it was pushed back due to the signs that the regime was also about to launch a missile. We will bring you more information on what comes out of the talks as the day goes on.
Thank you, Jang-oh. Now, in more North Korea-related news, the regime has released video of its recent long-range missile launch. The clip released on this Thursday by the North state-run Korean Central Television shows the missile at various angles. You're watching part of it now as it takes off from the Dongchangri launch site. It also shows the missile's first and second stage during the separation process as it hurtles towards space. In another part, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un can be seen praising staff members at the launch site. The South Korean government says it's currently analysing the footage to determine whether or not the video is for real or whether it might have been fabricated. The South Korean military is also analysing the debris from the rocket's first stage that was recovered from South Korean waters on Tuesday. Now, South Korea's National Assembly has kicked off a provisional session. Lawmakers are expected to try and reach a compromise over a number of contentious bills that await approval. Up until now, there has been very little progress on bills related to labour reform, counter-terrorism and redrawing Korea's electoral map. With a general election in mid-April, lawmakers have vowed to make progress at this session. Assembly Speaker Jung Hui-hwa is preparing to put his electoral proposal to a floor vote next Thursday, as he has previously announced, if the rival parties fail to conclude talks on the matter by Friday. US Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen has signalled that the Fed might delay but not abandon planned interest rate increases due to the ongoing risks facing the US economy. Park Jung-hong has the details.
Further rate hikes in the United States may be put on the back burner due to global uncertainties. Giving testimony before Congress, Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen said a variety of risks could pose a threat to U.S. growth and throw the economy off track.
Persistent weakness abroad exacerbated concerns about the outlook for global growth. These growth concerns, along with strong supply conditions and high inventories, contributed to the recent fall in the prices of oil and other commodities.
As for the major risk, Yellen singled out the uncertainty over China, saying it's weighing on the U.S. economy by rattling business sectors and has the potential to drag down other countries as well.
Should any of these downside risks materialize, foreign activity and demand for U.S. exports could weaken and financial market conditions could tighten further.
Despite the concerns, Yellen said the U.S. will likely stay on a path of moderate growth that will allow the Fed to push ahead with gradual adjustments to its monetary policy. But she stressed there was no preset course. Yellen added that the labor market should continue to improve and inflation will eventually rise toward the Fed's target. In December last year, the Fed raised the benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points, the first rate hike since a global financial crisis and recession in 2007. Park Jung-hong, Arirang News.
Now, with lingering uncertainties at home and abroad, analysts are keeping a close eye on how the South Korean market will react on the first day of trading after the long Lunar New Year holiday weekend. While officials say North Korea's latest provocation is unlikely to have much of an impact on the local market, external risks could. Kim Min-ji reports.
How will the South Korean market fare? With a series of internal and external risks emerging over the Lunar New Year holiday, analysts are keeping a close eye on how the market reacts. On the domestic front, North Korea launched a long-range missile on Sunday, and in response, South Korea suspended its operations at the InterKorean Kaesong industrial complex, a major source of income for the communist state. While the general consensus is that the North's latest provocation will have a limited impact on the local financial market, the poor health of the global economy could deal it a significant blow. Major stock markets around the world have recently lost ground. Japan, for one, saw its benchmark Nikkei lose over 5% on Tuesday and another 2% on Wednesday. On top of that, Japan has pushed down its interest rate into the negative territory, and contrary to expectations, the move would lower the value of the yen. It's gone the opposite direction, due in part to investors selling off risky assets in search of safe havens. Back in Seoul, shares opened sharply lower on Thursday, shedding 2.1% on its first day of trading following the Lunar New Year holiday. And as of 11:30 a.m., Seoul's benchmark Kospi lost nearly 2.5%. The country's finance ministry says it's keeping a close eye on local and global markets and vowed to convene regular meetings until the situation is closer to a resolution. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea is the world's most research-intensive economy, according to figures released by the OECD. In 2014, Korea invested just under 4.3% of its gross domestic product in R&D, ranking first out of the 34 OECD member countries and 7 developing nations. This is an over twofold increase from 2.2% posted in 1995, with the rise attributed to greater industrial investment. Israel ranked second, followed by Japan. Now, the members' average remained unchanged from 2013 at 2.37%, while South Korea ranked first in the proportion of its GDP devoted to research. The nation's R&D spending of $72.3 billion was 1/5 that of China's. LG Display reclaimed its spot as the top seller of Ultra HD panels in the fourth quarter of last year, thanks to the popularity of high-end TVs. According to data compiled by industry tracker IHS, LG Display shipped nearly 4 million units of UHD TV panels in the October to December period. That's up over 10% from the previous quarter and accounting for 35% of the global market, more than a third. Korea's Samsung Display came in second with shipments of nearly 2.8 million units, or a 25% share. Together, the two Korean panel makers made up 60% of the market. The combined shipments of UHD panels stood at 11.25 million units in the cited period, down 2.4% on quarter. Industry watchers say demand for UHD TVs is likely to rise, with manufacturers rolling out more affordable models. Now, a pregnant woman in Australia has tested positive for the Zika virus after recently returning from El Salvador. Local health authorities say the woman was diagnosed with the disease in southeast Queensland on Wednesday. They say the virus was acquired overseas. Officials say no further information will be released on the pregnant woman. Australia has reported a number of cases of Zika as a result of travellers infected overseas returning home. The risk of an outbreak in the country is considered very low. And with that, those are the stories we're following on this Thursday afternoon here in Seoul. Thank you as always for tuning in. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Until then, goodbye.